frogbitblog.
Oh, hi there. Welcome to episode 36 of the frogbitblog podcast. This week I've got Lenin, not the Lenin, Lenin's dead, but Len in. I've got my usual features, the deepest secrets of our souls. Nature is clever. I've got the King's College Traditionals in, well, they were still in from last week doing another song. Well, enjoy, listen up and enjoy. Hey.
Blog.
Well, obviously, the big news this week is the landmark report from the UN saying basically we've got 12 years to do something serious about reducing carbon emissions or, we're fucked. I don't think they actually used that terminology in the report, but probably they should have done. And the great thing was, obviously, it was brilliant. Remember this, that all the world leaders of the nations of the world had an emergency meeting and came out and said, yes, we, the world leaders, will make sure that we reduce carbon emissions to keep warming below 1.5 degrees because we owe it to our grandchildren. We owe it to future generations to make a stand so that they will be able to live a prosperous and healthy future. What? They didn't say that? What do you mean? Yeah, of course, they said bugger all, didn't they? Trump made some comment which implied he didn't believe it. The Australians started going on about coal, and here in Britain, the government said fuck all, except announce that they're going to allow fracking. And it seems like the only countries that are really asked about this are the ones that are going to be hit by this first. The small Pacific nations. Criminal, isn't it? And I think future generations, if there is any, are going to look back in horror about what we allowed to happen because we couldn't be asked. I mean, do people not care about their grandkids? They're all so busy making money and building up fortunes to pass on to their children without realising they're not actually giving their kids, and certainly not their grandkids and great-grandkids, an environment and a world for which to have that money. If you've got all that money, give it to environmental causes. If you really love your kids, grandkids, do something to make things better. Become the change you want to see. I mean, we can't believe in them a future of drought and floods and food shortages, mass migrations of displaced people. I mean, and that's even without considering how most of the wildlife and the ecosystem will be irreparably damaged. Anyway, go back to sleep, spend your time mocking the alarmists, those with some actual scientific evidence. I don't think I need to say any more on that, do you? Right, and I also read this week that there's a new Trump film out that claims that the Trump election win was an act of God. No, seriously, stop laughing and listen on. The Trump election win was an act of God. This is the theme of The Trump Prophecy, a movie telling the story of Mark Taylor, a former fireman from Orlando, forced to retire after suffering from PTSD. It says, between graphic nightmares featuring demonic monsters and hellish flames, Taylor received a message from God in April 2011 while he was surfing television channels. As he clicked to an interview with Trump, Taylor heard God say, "You are hearing the voice of the next president." Okay, right, so all these people don't believe a perfectly believable account of attempted rape from Christine Blasey Ford, but they believe that a fireman suffering from PTSD heard a message from God telling him that Trump was going to be president. The world's gone mad, ain't it? And there's more. He went on and he duly wrote a book, The Trump Prophecies, the astonishing true story of the man who saw tomorrow. Or should it be called How to Make a Profit from Pretending to be a Prophet? So he prophesied a man who has been talking about possibly running for president since the 90s, and he ran for president 5 years after his sign from God. That is amazing, isn't it? But just one thing, Mark Taylor, why the fuck would God pick you to deliver his message? Yeah, there's thousands of vicars, priests and holy men, and he picks on a fireman with PTSD. Strange that. God has waited 2,000 years to send down another person to share the message, and he's picked you. And it says here, the belief that Trump's election win was God's divine will is shared by others. Surprise, surprise. Franklin Graham, the prominent conservative evangelical, said last year that Trump's victory was the result of divine intervention. I could sense going across the country that God was going to do something this year, and I believe that at this election, God showed up.
Wow.
And there's more. Taylor has made other claims, which sort of goes to prove how prophetic he was. Is that pathetic? Taylor has made other claims, which he calls prophetic words. Now get this, in the next year, Barack Obama will be charged with treason and Trump will authorise the arrest of thousands of corrupt officials, many of whom are part of a massive satanic paedophile ring. Trump will also force the release of cures for cancer and Alzheimer's that are currently being withheld by the pharmaceutical industry. Right, okay. Believe this, you load of mentalist loons. You think if God showed up, God, him or her, would be pissing himself laughing at you, or he'd send a plague of locusts to smite thee down, or whatever he used to do. Tell you what, planet Earth, I'll not send you my only begotten son, Jesus, again, as you crucified him last time. This time, I'm going to send you a sex pest, racist, ginger gangster, and I'm going to let you know via a fireman with PTSD. Sorry, America, you're seriously broken at the moment, aren't you?
From Bitblog.
Right, so all of you who believe in people having an aura around them, well, I mean, science has found one. I mean, we sort of know that we have anyway, partly because we give off light. All living things give off light. We give off electromagnetic force. We give off electrical force. We give off a gravitational force. Anyway, but science has found one of sorts. And apparently in orbit around each of us is a cloud of microscopic particles, chemicals and microorganisms swirling around us and never leaves our side. This invisible swarm is known as the exposome. Yeah, and your exposome is unique to you. Now, researchers are beginning to dive into these strange idiosyncratic universes, and what they're finding is remarkable. And this is what the article says. People have measured things like air pollution on a broad scale, but no one has really measured biological and chemical exposures at a personal level, said geneticist Michael Snyder from Stanford. No one really knows how vast the human exposome is and what kind of things are in there. Snyder continued, it turns out, even at very close distances, we have a very different exposure profiles or signatures. The bottom line is that we all have our own microbiome cloud that we're schlepping around and spewing out. Sorry, schlepping and spewing. What's schlepping? Is that an American term? Anyway, schlepping. I'll carry on. If you're a germaphobe, you're probably thinking you need a shower right about now. But it turns out, while your cloud's unique profile might shift slightly when you wash or alter your environment, it's surprisingly consistent, and there's really no escaping it. So there is this exposome following you around everywhere you go, and you can't get rid of it. So there you go, you smelly twats.
I wish that van would bloody hurry up. I'm bloody freezing. Yeah, breast monkeys, innit? Oh, here they are. Oi, oi! You alright? Alright, lads. Get in, you slags. Where are we going today, Gov? We're building a wall down in Walthamstow. No, we got a job today bricking outside our normal area. Where's that? South London? Nah, North Pole actually. You got to put on a diving suit, put a hot water bottle in to keep warm, then go down the bottom of the sea and start building a wall. You're fucking kidding me, aren't you? Well, yeah, of course I'm kidding you. You're not allowed hot water bottle in diving suits, you daft slag.
Well, actually, not as far-fetched as it may seem. Building walls on the seafloor may become the next frontier of climate science as engineers seek novel ways to hold back the sea level rises predicted to result from global warming. By erecting barriers of rock and sand, researchers believe they could halt the slide of undersea glaciers as they disintegrate into the deep. It would be a drastic endeavour, but could buy some time if climate change takes hold, according to a new paper published on Thursday. Though the notion may sound far-fetched, the design would be relatively straightforward. We are imagining a very simple structure, simply piles of gravel or sand on the ocean floor. Right, so they're not actually building walls, they're just dumping it there. Anyway, Michael Wolovic, researcher at the Department of Geosciences at Princeton. I'm sure he didn't sound like that, actually. He described the plans as within the order of magnitude of plausible human achievements. The structures would not just be aimed at holding back the melting glaciers, but at preventing warmer water from reaching the bases of the glaciers under the sea. New research is now being undertaken by scientists showing that how effects of the warmer water around the world as the oceans warm up may be leading causes of underwarming, melting of the glaciers. And of course, we've got all these solutions, but you know what? They're going to be far more expensive than trying to stop climate change in the first place. Anyway, there you go.
The frogbitblog.
Oh, yeah. It's Lanigan. It's sexy Lanigan. Ooh, yeah. It's Lanigan. Ooh, yeah, it's Lanigan.
Okay, so Sexy Len is back again. You actually, we're friends on Facebook now, me and Len. We're Facebook friends, and you actually sent me a link about the Great Pacific. I got Pacific, not specific. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch, didn't you? Because you found some stuff on. Was it on Facebook or you found it out in the wide world?
Yeah, it actually came up on The Verge, which is one of my favourite tech sites that I tend to watch, and it was keep an eye on, and it came through about the cleanup operations have actually started. Feels like there's been a lot of talk happening about things and different ways that we could be doing it, but we never actually started doing anything about it. It just came out of the blue that they've actually started doing it.
Yes.
Which is marvellous.
I know. So they're actually cleaning up the Pacific Garbage Patch. I mean, I suppose the main thing we have to worry about things like this is that people will see that as an excuse. Oh, we're all right, we can just carry on creating plastics. Is that as soon as there's a tech solution, it might end up meaning that we don't solve the problem at source, sort of thing. But there does seem to be movement, doesn't there? There seems to be more interest in manufacturers creating different kinds of plastic, really, and you know, sustainable plastic. And just, I mean, wouldn't it be great if you could just go, if you really want a fizzy drink, just go into the shop and take your own bottle and get it filled up. But then people would realise that they wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the products anyway, and that's part of the problem, isn't it? Is that manufacturers rely so much on the packaging. But it's good to see, and I can see that with you, your water bottle, how many people now are bringing their own water bottles, because you know, people wouldn't be able to tell the difference between bottles of water, one brand and the other, would they?
And there's an app for it now as well. You can you can go onto the app. I'll bring it up on my phone while we're talking, just so I know exactly what it's called. But you can actually go into local towns, use your GPS on your phone, and you can find out fill up points. I think it's all through the Northumbria Water have started.
Oh, there's one in the northeast, because I know London, they've started lots of fountains there, haven't they?
Well, this is just shops and restaurants and things that allow you to go in with your water bottle and you top up, and you can actually get gamification rewards for doing so.
Oh wow! Without even buying anything.
Without buying anything, this is totally. But obviously, the incentive of being there, you might feel like you want to. So it's incentives and win-win situations.
Oh, right.
But also this morning there was a fantastic one. I've now got nappy sacks for my young child. That are now biodegradable and have an expiry date on them.
Oh, good.
Yeah, which is absolutely fantastic, because that's been a bugbear, but a necessity for such a long time. Yeah. I couldn't think of a way around it, really.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Biodegradable nappies, brilliant.
There you go.
One thing that we were talking about the other week, because we talk about futurism, don't we? That's your big thing. And we were talking about augmented body parts, because, you know, you see the videos now, and bionic, it's basically $6 Million Man when I was a kid, the bionic man, and now they're creating bionic parts for disabled people or people without limbs that the brain can actually manipulate. And that's the start of it. And I didn't really think through the implications, because it won't be long once they're up and running, is that the next decision will be, do people do able-bodied people start cutting off limbs and replacing them? And you can see the military doing that really quickly, couldn't you? Or, you could see people choosing to be bionic for the military advantage. And then it'll be, I mean, how long down the line before able-bodied people start going, oh, I want a new limb, I want a stronger arms or stronger legs and parts that won't wear out as quickly as my normal. And then there's that whole debate about when do we become cyborg and when are we human?
Yeah, I mean, we're almost there, really. I mean, there's been so much developments even since the last time we spoke. It's been mind-blowing.
Really?
Yeah, honestly. I mean, if we're thinking about it, it's almost like the definition of cyborg you could define as us now. It's like when you're not with your phone, it's almost like an extension of your body anyway. So obviously you're replacing the need for being able to do calculations in your brain by also having a calculator always with you.
Yes.
I mean, that could be argued that's already stepping into that realm.
It's just stuck on the end of our hand.
Yeah.
It's not internal.
It's not internal, but for some people it already is. You've still got neural links for controlling limbs that have been amputated, for example. But
how do they work then?
Well, it's very complicated.
Right.
I'm to be honest with you, it's a manipulation of the the electric activity in the brain, then stimulating the use of the limb. I suppose is the best way to describe it. The important thing is also that it's probably not going to end up as the of strength and things like that. It's very, very useful, but to be honest, we're going to have robots to do that stuff anyway. So why do we need the strength?
There will be, won't there?
The automation and building of things. The important thing that development-wise that came through recently from Elon Musk, who's a very interesting fellow when it comes to futuristic views, is that the AI revolution is going to be inevitable, and that could be very worrying for human beings if we're going to be sort of exceeded by extremely powerful AIs that are going to be superior to us in many, many ways. So basically, it's the join them or be beaten by them kind of attitude. Really, do we evolve with them, or do we have it as a separate species? That's the interesting part of it. And the neural link aspects of that is basically the next step, which is instead of using a keyboard and mouse or a little touchscreen on your device to manipulate what's going on within a computer, it'll be a direct link to the brain, which speeds things up dramatically. It's like going from dial-up internet to a fast lane.
So will it be like a little transmitter or something that transmits to the machine? Is that how it'll work?
Quite possibly. It could be a direct link to the brain. It kind of has to be, really. Could be nanobots if we're looking really far into the future.
Right. So you'll just actually have to think and it'll do. Whoa.
Yeah, and arguably, it's been hinted at that we might already be there.
Really?
Which is really fascinating.
And it's that whole question then of what it is to be human then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I know my son's bought me a book, Sapiens. Which
I'm
really good.
about halfway through it.
Because I mentioned that in the last podcast as a chapter on how we treated animals that I couldn't read. But he says there's a Sapiens 2. And I said, well, how can you go beyond the history of mankind? And he says it's all about the future, about where we're going to be and how the line is going to blur. And, you could see, 50 or 100 years down the line, you won't be able to tell the difference between complete AI robots and us, and we'll be part of them and they'll be part of us. And there's so many fundamental issues is that the world is going to look very, very different, isn't it, in that sense?
I try to hopefully take the sort of utopian sort of standpoint on it, really, rather than a dystopian.
Well,
because it's inevitable, so we might as well try and be positive about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, but all the sci-fi writers have always talked about this, and it always seems to end up dystopian, doesn't it? But I suppose that makes a better book, and they all lived happily ever after.
Indeed.
So, what is the utopian way of looking at this then?
I suppose the utopian way of looking at it is that we still retain what makes us as human, but it's very, very hard to define, isn't it? But I suppose our humanity is based around how we relate to each other.
The empathy
aspect,
yes,
exactly.
Yes.
If we still have that, then...
And what happens if they can program empathy in machines? Well,
what does that look like? How does it feel? Do they make that decision themselves? It's fascinating stuff.
Whoa. Yeah. Well, we've gone on, Len. We've gone on for 7.5 minutes, but that's absolutely brilliant. Well, thank you for coming in once again.
Always welcome.
It's very, very interesting to talk to you, and I will speak to you soon.
Thank you.
If you remember last episode, I had the King's College Traditionals in doing me a song for my hippie spiritual universe is brilliant nonsense that I prat on about. The Deepest Secrets of Our Souls, it was called. Slightly unfortunately named, but there you go. Well, you might remember as well is that the King's College Traditionals were trying to microdose psilocybin after hearing about it on the show. You know, how Silicon Valley are all doing it to help creativity. And for those that missed it, microdosing is where you take a drug in such small quantities that it doesn't, how do I put this, get you off your tits, or to be more precise, you don't immediately feel the psychotropic benefits of it, but it does make slight changes to your brain chemistry to make you feel more creative and switched on. So enough so you can function perfectly normally, only better than normal, apparently. Anyway, the King's College Traditionals took way too much. They came in a bit trippy and loved up and did me the new Deepest Secrets jingle. Well, after I went off air, I got them to do some more stuff, as I quite like what they did. These upper-class twits, I thought it was quite good. So anyway, this is the conversation and another jingle that they did for me. All right, chaps, so you've had a 15-minute break. How are you feeling now?
We're doing great, Mr. Frogbit. We're all at one with the universe.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Anyway, I asked you if you could also do me a jingle for my regular look at the world of drugs, illegal and illegal. Did you manage one?
Well, Mr. Frogbit, we channeled the energy of the 60s and tried to come up with a tribute to the Summer of Love style jingle.
Oh, that sounds good. Let's hear it then.
Okay, but I've just given my harpsichord some marijuana, so it's starting to sound a bit weird, but let's go. Okay, boys?
Is it okay to talk about drugs? Is it okay? Gonna do it anyway. Is it okay to talk about drugs? Is it okay? Gonna do it anyway.
You're right, that harpsichord did sound a bit, well, you know, surreal.
Yes, the world's first tripping harpsichord. Far out, man.
Look, steady on, boys, or you're going to become full-blown hippies. Then there's going to be no turning back, is there?
There's no turning back, Mr. Frogbit. We've rejected the class-based privilege that we have been brought up to think was the natural order. We realise now that we are no better than you, or the birds, or the bees, or the flowers, or the trees. We're going to turn the country estate into an ashram and hold mass meditations to try and raise the consciousness of the world to a higher plane.
Well, that's great. Good on you, boys. And while you're at it, can you get the rest of your social class to stop killing animals for fun? That would be absolutely great if you could do that.
We'll try our best, Mr. Frogbit. We wish peace on you.
Peace on you. I'm not Donald Trump and you're not a Russian prostitute.
Sorry?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Look, boys, thanks and bye for now.
Bye.
So, is it okay to talk about drugs?
Is it okay to talk about drugs?
This is the headline that appeared in The Guardian last week. Cannabis capitalists seek funds to drive drug trade. Ooh, gold. London conference pushes uses ranging from reducing pain to increasing orgasms. Or both, if you're into that kind of thing. In a Mayfair hotel ballroom, some of the UK's biggest banks and pension funds have gathered to consider an investment in a new wonder ingredient that promises to revolutionise products ranging from pharmaceuticals, face creams and diet supplements to yoghurt and beer. That ingredient is cannabis, or marijuana, as we say on this show. And it has exploded into a multi-billion-dollar industry as countries relax rules on its medicinal and personal use. It has also become a serious investment proposition. The global cannabis industry has gathered in London this week for Europe's largest marijuana investment conference, Cannabis Invest, with bosses of industrial-scale weed growers hoping to tap UK investors for fresh funds to drive expansion plans. And then the article goes on to talk about Canada and the legalization of marijuana, which is going to be a big thing and there's going to be lots of money to be made. It then goes on to say, Nav Dwaliwal, chief executive wholesale company Supreme Cannabis, said, cannabis is an emerging global market and our thesis is that we are at the beginning of a global rollout. I don't know if he meant that on purpose. Is it a roll up? We estimate that the market will be worth $180 to $200 billion a year over the next decade just for medicinal use. $200 billion a year for medicinal cannabis. Wow. And cannabis will expand beyond medical use. For pharmaceutical companies to alcohol to tobacco, cannabis is a threat to all of these industries. Make no mistake, this is going to become a large global industry, bigger than global brewing. And interesting, then it goes on to talk about the Billy Caldwell case. You know, the one I've mentioned a few times on here. The young lad that needs it for his epilepsy. Well, guess what? The UK has only gone and changed the law to allow medical marijuana. After Billy's case just showed what a ridiculous idea it was to be banned in the first place. That's great news for all those people that need medical cannabis for all sorts of health issues. You know, that very useful medicinal drug, and it's only right that people should get it if they need it. Anyway, back to the article. The article then says cannabis can also deliver a greater range of experiences than beer because its 483 compounds can be combined in different ways to produce different experiences. Beer will get you drunk, he said. Cannabis is a different kind of animal. One combination may deliver a stimulating, uplifting effect, perfect for a night out with friends. Another may make you relaxed and be perfect for a night in at home binge watching a TV series. Or another may be perfect for a romantic evening with your partner. Or on your own, it could be, yeah. Other companies are promising to exploit the latter in lubricants, which claim to help women achieve 8 to 10 orgasms. Oh, no, I read that wrong. It helps 8 in 10 women achieve better orgasms. A cannabis sexual lubricant. Good name for a band, that, isn't it? Cannabis sexual lubricant. So there you go. That's all I'm going to talk about this week, about drugs.
Is it okay to talk about drugs? Is it okay?
Right, it's time for a look at the inner workings of...
In the deepest secrets of our souls, my mind unravels like a toilet bowl.
Now, remember last episode I touched on a thing called panpsychism. Not that I'm a big believer in it, but I do think it's a really interesting concept and not one that should be dismissed instantly. And I was watching Tyson deGrasse talking about science last week, and he wasn't on about panpsychism, but he says that the universe doesn't exist to be understood by us, which I thought was an interesting way of looking at it. What is panpsychism, I hear you ask? Is it kitchenware that can see into the future? No, of course not. Just a little joke there. Panpsychism is the belief that everything material, no matter how small, has an element of individual consciousness. And I'm going to read just from a bit of an article, because he explains it a bit better than I can. According to panpsychism, the smallest bits of matter, things such as electrons and quarks, have a very basic kinds of experience. An electron has an inner life. Physics doesn't tell us what matter is, only what it does. The job of physics is to provide us with mathematical models that allow us to predict with great accuracy how matter will behave. Now, this is incredibly useful information. It allows us to manipulate the world in extraordinary ways, leading to the technological advancements that have transformed our society beyond recognition. But it is one thing to know the behaviour of an electron and quite another to know the intrinsic nature, how the electron is in itself. Physical science gives us rich information about the behaviour of matter, but leaves us completely in the dark about its intrinsic nature. We know that some matter inside our brain creates experience. We now face a theoretical choice. We either suppose that the intrinsic nature of fundamental particles involves experience, or we suppose that they have some entirely unknown intrinsic nature. On the former supposition, the nature of macroscopic things is continuous with the nature of microscopic things. The latter supposition leads us to complexity, discontinuity, and mystery. The theoretical imperative to form as simple a unified view as is consistent with the data leads us straightforwardly in the direction of panpsychism. So basically, that panpsychism joins the macroscopic and the microscopic. Which is very interesting, isn't it? Quite confusing, but very interesting. And I'm wondering how I got here, because I'm not a believer in panpsychism. I just find it very interestingly. It interests me as a concept that if we take consciousness as a basic awareness of existence, and I've always known that all animals have it, and animals have sophisticated emotion, and as Charles Darwin said about us and animals, it's a question of degree, not of kind. And when I sort of did my research into plants and trees and slime mold, and I'm going to talk more about that last week, so I'll not go into that. Intelligence and consciousness seem to be appearing in smaller and smaller and simpler things. So where does it stop? And what if it doesn't stop? And it is everywhere, in every tiny atom, every quark, every Higgs boson, and every tiny, tiny particle. Why not? And here's an interesting Einstein quote that I got the other day. How have we now become too material? No, this is the Einstein quote. Anyone who has become seriously involved in the pursuit of science becomes convinced there is a spirit manifest in the laws of the universe, a spirit vastly superior to that of man. And Einstein said that, yeah. And does that mean have we become too materialist? I mean, I don't consider myself spiritual by any means. But gravity, what is gravity? We know what it does, but it's an invisible force pulling on us. But imagine if we just use a different word to force. Imagine if we sort of said cosmic energy, divine energy, and then the meaning becomes totally different, doesn't it? And it all becomes a bit hippy-dippy, but just by using a different term to explain the same thing, it gives a different connotation. And Max Planck, the father of quantum physics, said, all matter originate and exists only by virtue of a force. We must assume behind this force is the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. Oh, interesting. It's interesting when scientists start coming out with stuff like this, isn't it? I'm going to leave that there for now. Right, it's time for...
Nature is clever, it's really, really clever. Nature is clever.
I mentioned a while back that I've been reading a book called Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are? And the reason why I said it like that is because it's Dutch. And it's by a fella that did lots of research into ape intelligence. And it seems like half the problem and one of the reasons why it's taken so long to realise the intelligence of, well, all creatures was the attitude of the scientists who study these sorts of things. Not all of them, obviously, but the book goes in to give examples where scientists who really wanted to prove that humans are cleverer or didn't even want to begin to contemplate that we might not be so effing exceptional after all. An example in the book, it was regarded for a long time that humans were much better at facial recognition than the ape family. And this is because they did tests that were done to test it. Except guess what? They showed both humans and apes human faces to recognise. And surprise, surprise, the humans did much better. Surprise, surprise, the reason being that, well, humans have more varied faces than monkeys, so they should be able to recognise differences in humans better than they would of their own species. Yes, you heard that right. Some knobhead thought or didn't think that species are evolutionarily designed to recognise their own species first and foremost. They didn't think that, obviously. I mean, what would be the point of that other than mating and all that stuff? Yeah. And guess what? When some more enlightened scientists like Frans de Waal, who's the bloke that wrote the book, came along and let the apes study pictures of other ape faces, guess what? They were just as good as humans, as apes were as good as recognising each other as humans were at recognising humans. And that's the premise of the book, really. It wasn't just to show how truly intelligent animals are. It was looking at how often the science behind the way we look at them it is, but to less extent, I think now, because of an inherent bias and this idea of human exceptionalism sort of attitude of the scientists. And there's lots of examples in this book. And it does seem that ones that know best are usually the ones that are willing to spend thousands of hours studying these animals in their own habitat, as well as doing cognitive tests in zoo environment. What a surprise! And as an aside, an interesting observation I didn't know about chimps is that they show restraint. It was always believed that it was just us civilised humans, but they're not. Apes aren't just wild and abandoned and go for it. They're not just wild. In fact, one of the examples they were given was they had chimps. They had to get them to play up for the chimps' tea parties, as the chimps were actually calm and considerate to one another, and crowds had come to see them acting like mad chimps, and they were all disappointed, so they had to train the chimps to act. And another thing is, when the couples want to breed, they discreetly and quietly go off and have sex. It's not just one big long chimp orgy. And no, I haven't watched those kinds of videos, thanks for asking. I think I'll leave that there this week. So that's all I've got time for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you once again for Len for coming in. He'll be back again next episode. And that's it, really. Have a good fortnight. Bye.
Frogbitblog. The Frogbitblog. Frogbitblog. The Frogbitblog.